Okay, let's do some math. Math 2, Mr. Trutna, Clovis High School. We're going to go over worksheet 9, or unit 9, worksheet 4A. We're going to do numbers 5 through 14. Okay, so here we go. Start us off with a little riddle, a joke, so to speak. You know why you should always be careful when standing near trees. Watch the rest of the video and you'll get the answer. Okay, so let's start off with number 5. We're doing 5 through 14, and in each one of these problems, we're going to factor each expression. In the first 4 problems, we're going to check our answer by multiplying, and then the last 6 problems, we're just going to factor and not check, okay? Every problem is going to be a trinomial that we're going to factor, and every problem that we factor is going to be a trinomial, and it's going to not have a leading coefficient right here. Okay, so in order to look at these trinomials that we're going to factor, what we're going to constantly be doing is we're going to constantly be referring to our cheat sheet for trinomials. Okay, this is the second technique that we've learned on how to factor, and you can see this right here is going to be our cheat sheet. Okay, let me pull that down a little bit. So we're going to be looking at this cheat sheet right here. So in number 5, excuse me, you see we have a trinomial and we have a plus plus. So our cheat sheet with our plus plus says to us that this trinomial is going to factor into, and what we do is we always start our trinomials by drawing 2 parentheses, and our cheat sheet says that when we have a plus plus, we're going to have a plus and a plus in each one of the factors that we're going to have. Okay, so the first terms of each parentheses of our factors is going to be whatever multiplies to make y squared. Well, that's easy. We could put a y and a y there. So we know that our factors are going to be y plus some number and y plus some number. Okay, so right now everybody should be able to do that part. And now what we do is, now we're just going to have to do a little bit of math. So what we're going to do is, now to figure out what numbers go here and what number goes right there, we're going to take our very last term, which is 6 here. That's going to be our C value from our cheat sheet. And I'm just going to write that value over here, and underneath that, I'm going to write all the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 6. Okay? So in other words, 1 times 6 is 6, and 2 times 3 is 6. Now, one of those pairs is going to be my answer to what I put here and here for my factors, okay? And this middle value, my B value, which is positive 5, that middle value tells me. So which one of those pairs can I put together by addition or subtraction to make 5? Well, the answer is going to be 2 and 3. Okay, and the reason is because it has to be a positive and a positive. Okay, so since positive 2 plus positive 3 is equal to 5, I know that my factors have to be y plus 2 and y plus 3. Okay, you guys, so that would be part A right there. So that would be how we factor that. Okay, now in B, we want to check our answer by multiplying. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply out y plus 2 times y plus 5. So how do I do that? Well, I like to multiply out polynomials by setting up the rectangle. I put a y plus 2 along the top of the rectangle, and I put a y plus 3 along the side of the rectangle. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply y times y. That gives me a y squared in that rectangle. For this top right rectangle, I'm going to take this y, I'm going to multiply it by positive 2. Y times 2 is 2y. For this bottom left rectangle, I'm going to go positive 3 times y, so that's positive 3y. And for the last rectangle, I'm going to go 3 times 2, so that's 6. So you can see this right here is my answer when I multiply out y plus 2 times y plus 3, and that's going to be y to the second. And then I'm going to combine these two together here. 3y and 2y make positive 5y. And then I have a positive 6 at the end. So you can see I got back to where I started. So there is my answer to number 5. Okay, moving on to number 6. T squared plus 9t plus 18. So I'm going to refer to my cheat sheet here. I have a plus plus in my trinomial. So I have a plus plus. So that means when I factor this, I'm going to have 2 sets of parentheses. And then, according to my cheat sheet, I'm going to have a plus plus in each parentheses. Okay? Now, the first terms are going to multiply to make t squared, so I'm going to have a t there and a t, so I'm going to have t plus something and t plus something. In order to figure out what numbers, once again, that I'm going to put in these two spots, what I do is I take my last number, 18, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll write it over here, and I'll take 18, and then I'm going to write all the pairs of numbers that multiply together to make 18. Okay, well, that would be 1 times 18, or it could be 2 times 9, or it could be 6 times 3. Now, one of those pairs is my solution to my factors that go at the end of each parentheses. And to determine which one it is, I look at my middle number here. Notice my middle number is positive 9. Which one of these can be combined to make positive 9? Well, it's 6 and 3. 6 plus 3 is equal to 9. So then my factors are t plus 6 and t plus 3. Okay, in order to check my answer, I'm going to multiply these back out. So I'm going to set up my rectangle to multiply these back out here. Some of you have figured out how to multiply two binomials without using the rectangle method. That's fine. I put a t and a plus 6 along the top. At the plus, I draw a vertical line. Along the left side, I put a t and a plus 3. And at the addition symbol, I draw a horizontal line. And then I find the area of each one of these small rectangles. So the first rectangle here, right here, I'm going to go t times t. That's t squared. To find the area of this rectangle, I'm going to go this side, t times this side, positive 6. So that's 6t. To find the area of the bottom left rectangle, I'm going to go this side, which is positive 3, times this side, which is t. So that would be 3t. And then to find the last rectangle, I'd go 3 times 6, so that's 18. So you can see when I multiply this out, I have a t squared. I combine these two together to make positive 9t. And then I have a positive 18 at the end. So you can see it checks out. Okay? Number 7, x squared plus 16x plus 63. So I'm going to go to my cheat sheet right here. Notice in number 7, I have a trinomial that's a plus plus. So I'm going to once again have a plus and a plus in each one of my parentheses. So whenever I'm factoring a trinomial, I know it's going to factor into two parentheses, and my cheat sheet tells me I'm going to have a plus and a plus. My first term is x squared, so I start my first term in each parentheses is x and x. And now I'm going to have to do a little bit of math to figure out what goes in the second part in each one of these values. These are going to be numerical values right here. So I take my last term, which we call our c value, which is 63, and I'm going to make a list of all the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 63. So 1 and 63, 3 times 21, 9 times 7, okay, and that's it. Okay, now one of these pairs is my answer for those two numbers, and the answer is whatever pair I look at my middle term here, which we call my b value, which is positive 16, which one of these can be combined by addition, by both of them being positive, to make 16? Well, it's 9 and 7. Since we know that 9 plus 7 is equal to 16, and since 16 is my b, my middle value here, I know this is going to be a plus 9 and a plus 7. And you could write it as x plus 7, x plus 9. That's going to be my factor for number 7. Okay, checking my answer. I'm going to multiply it out and see if it equals the original term that I started with. Okay, so I put an x plus 9 along the top of my rectangle. Draw a vertical line at the addition, put an x plus 7 along the left side of my rectangle, draw a horizontal line, and now I'm going to fill each rectangle out. So the top left rectangle, I'm going to go x times x, x squared. The top right rectangle, I'm going to go this side, which is x, times this, which is 9. X times 9 is 9x. Bottom left rectangle, I'm going to go this side, which is positive 7, times this, which is x, so that gives me 7x. And the last rectangle, I'm going to go 7 times 9, so I get 63, you could see that equals x squared. That's x squared. Then I'm going to combine these two together. 7x and 9x make positive 16x. And then I have a plus 63 at the end. And you can see my answer checks out. Okay, number 8, d to the second, or d squared, plus 2d minus 15. And I'm going to factor that. So I go to my cheat sheet here, and notice I have a trinomial. It's a plus and a minus. So when I have a plus and a minus, according to my cheat sheet, my two sets of parentheses, I'm going to have a plus and a minus. So I set up my two parentheses. The first parentheses is going to have an addition symbol in it. My second parentheses is going to have a minus symbol in it, or a subtraction symbol in it. My first terms of each parentheses will be what multiplies to make that first term, d squared, so that's d and d. Okay, and now I'm going to figure out what numbers to put here. So I go to my last value, which is 15. I'm not going to worry about the negative, the minus. I'm just going to worry about 15. And I'm going to write down all the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 15. Okay, well, that's 1 times 15. There's really only 2 choices that I have. And I have 5 times 3. One of those is my answer. Once again, which one of those can I put together to make positive 2? Okay, now notice so it has to be 5 and 3. There's no way I could put 1 and 15 together by adding or subtracting to get 5 and 2. Okay, but notice, so I'm going to choose 5 and 3, but one of those numbers has to be addition, one of them has to be subtraction. So I could either do positive 5 minus 3, or I could choose positive 3 minus 5. Okay, well, which one's right? It's a positive 2. Well, it has to be this one right here. So my answer is positive 5, so it has to be t plus 5 and d minus 3. That would be my solution to number 8. Multiplying that out to see if I did it right, I'm going to set up my rectangle, and I'm going to use the idea of area to multiply it out. D plus 5 goes along the top of my rectangle. D minus 3 goes along the side of my rectangle. Now on this one, remember, you got to be careful. We have to treat that 3 as a negative 3 because we have that minus there. Okay, so filling it out, d times d, d squared. For this rectangle, it would be d times positive 5, 5d. For this rectangle, I would take negative 3, multiply it by that side, d, so that's negative 3d. And for the area of the last rectangle, I would take this side, which is negative 3, multiply it by positive 5, so I get negative 15. Writing this out, I have a d squared. I can combine these two together. 5d minus 3d is positive 2d. And then I have a minus 15 at the end. So you could see that it checks out with my answer there. Okay, all right, so for numbers 9 through 14, we're going to factor, but we're not going to multiply it back out to check. So number 9, notice I have a trinomial and it's a minus minus. So I look at my cheat sheet. Minus minus on my cheat sheet tells me my parentheses that I'm going to factor is going to be a plus and a minus. So in number 9, I'm going to draw my two parentheses. And the first parentheses is going to have an addition symbol in it. The second parentheses is going to have a subtraction symbol in it because that's what my cheat sheet tells me to do. Okay, all right, so I'm going to put a z and a z as the first term in each parentheses. Why? Because z and z multiplied together make z squared. Okay, now I'm going to fill in, figure out what numbers go in here. So I take my last number, which is 18. We call that the c value. And I'm going to write out the multiples, the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 18. So 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6. Those are all the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 18. One of these is going to be my answer here. Okay, and notice my middle term here, my b value is negative 3. So which one of those can be put together to make negative 3? Well, it has to be 6 and 3. Those are the only two that I could add or subtract together to even make 3. So those are out. So now the question is, should it be a positive 6 and a negative 3, Or should it be the other way around? A negative 6 and a positive 3. Well, we look here. That number is a minus 3 or a negative 3. So it has to be negative 6 and positive 3 because those add together to make negative 3. So here I'm going to put the minus has to be the 6 because it's negative. The plus has to be for the 3. So number 9 factors into z plus 3, z minus 6. Okay, number 10. I have a negative and a negative trinomial again. So I go here to my cheat sheet. A negative and a negative give me two factors where one is addition, one is subtraction. All right, so in number 10, I set up my two parentheses. My first parentheses is going to be addition. My second parentheses is going to be subtraction. And then I take my last term, 40. I'm not going to worry about the negative 40 yet. I'm just going to do 40. And I'm going to write out all the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 40. One of the pairs will be my solutions. Okay, I put an n here. I put an n here because I have an n squared. N times n is n squared. All right, so what are the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 40? I have 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, and 8 and 5, or 5 and 8. Doesn't really matter which way you write it. Okay, I look at my middle term here, which is a 6 or a negative 6. Which one of these can I put together by adding or subtracting to even get to 6? Well, obviously, it has to be 4 and 10. Okay, so now my choices are, one of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative. Is my choice going to be positive 4 and minus 10, or is it going to be positive 10 and minus 4? How we choose is we look at our middle term. It's a negative 6. So which one of these make negative 6? Well, it's positive 4 and negative 10. So those would be my two numbers. So my factors are n plus 4 and n minus 10 for number 10. Moving on to number 11. P squared minus 12p plus 35. So I'm going to set up my two parentheses, and then I'm going to determine what should I do plus minus, what should I have in each parentheses. I go to my cheat sheet. This cheat sheet is something you should start memorizing. So I have a minus and a plus. You can see in my cheat sheet, if I have a minus and a plus, both symbols have to be subtraction inside the parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to have a minus and a minus here. My first term is p squared, so my first term in each parentheses is p and p. Then to figure out what numbers I fill in, I go to this number right here, the last number. We call that the c value, which is 35. And then I'm going to take that 35 and I'm going to make a list of all the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 35. I only have two choices, 7 times 5 and 1 times 35. Which one of those pairs can possibly be put together through addition or subtraction to make 12? Well, obviously it has to be 7 and 5, and they're both minus, so I don't have to do much thinking. I put a minus 7 and I put a minus 5, so number 11 factors in the p minus 7 and p minus 5. Okay? All right, number 12. So once again, I have a q squared minus 12q plus 20, so I have a trinomial. It's a minus and a plus. I look at my cheat sheet. I have a minus, I have a plus. That means my parentheses are both going to be minuses, or both subtraction when I factor it out. Okay, so to start number 12, and everybody should be able to do this, you draw two parentheses. The cheat sheet says put a minus and a minus. Everybody should be able to do that. You're just reading off your sheet. And then my first term have to be q's, because q times q is q to the second. Now I have to do a little bit of math. So I take a look at my last term, which is 20, and I'm going to write down the list of pairs of numbers that multiply to make 20. All right, so 1 times 20, 2 times 10, or 4 times 5. Those are my choices. One of those pairs is going to have to be able to put together through addition or subtraction to make 12. Okay, well, obviously it has to be the 2 and the 10. And since my factors say they both have to be negative, I just have q minus 2, q minus 10. So there's my factors for number 12. All right, now if you wrote it as q minus 10 first and q minus 2 first, that's not going to matter. Now, why does that work, by the way? Well, here's why. A negative 2 times a negative 20 gives me positive 20. So that's why they're both negative, because they have to multiply together to ultimately make positive 20. Okay, all right, next one, y squared plus y minus 56. A little hard to see, I wrote over it there. So I'm going to go to my cheat sheet. I haven't done one like this. I have a trinomial, it's a plus minus. So I have a plus minus according to my cheat sheet. So that means my two sets of quantities, my parentheses, are going to be plus and minus. So I draw my two parentheses. According to my cheat sheet, I have to have a plus here, I have to have a minus here. My first term in my trinomial is y squared, so my first term in each one of my factors, which are going to be binomials, by the way, are going to be y and y. Why? Because y times y is y to the second. Now I'm going to take my last term, which is 56. I'm not going to worry about the minus 56. I'm just going to worry about the number 56. And I'm going to write down the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 56. 1 times 56, 2 times 28. Let's see. 4 times 14, 7 times 8. There's my choices of numbers that make 56. One of these pairs is going to be my numbers for here. Now, I look here in my middle value. Notice that's a plus and it's a y. Well, that y has a number in front of it. What is it? It's a 1. Okay, if there's no coefficient in front of the y, it's implied that it's a 1. So one of these pairs, through addition or subtraction, can be put together to make positive 1. Obviously, that has to be 8 and 7. Okay, but now if we look at my parentheses, it has to be a positive and a negative number. So my choices are, should it be positive 8 minus 7, or should it be positive 7 minus 8? Which one of those would give me my positive 1 that I need? Well, it's positive 8 and minus 7. That gives me positive 1. So that means this has to be a y plus 8, and this has to be a y minus 7. So that would be my factors for 13. Last one, number 14, before you get to see the solution to the riddle. Okay, I have a plus plus in my trinomial. So my cheat sheet says when I have a plus plus trinomial, both parentheses are going to be pluses. There. So number 14, I draw my two parentheses. These are going to be my two binomials. They both have pluses. My first term of my trinomial is x squared. So that means my first term of my binomial factors will be x and x. So now, to figure out what numerals go here, I look at my last term, my c value, 42. And I'm going to make a list of all the pairs of numbers that multiply to make 42. 1 and 42, 2 times 21, 3 times 14, 6 times 7. These are my choices. One of those choices is my answer, and my choice would be which pair of numbers can be combined through addition or subtraction to make positive 13. Well, obviously that has to be 6 plus 7. That's equal to 13. So my factors are x plus 6, x plus 7. Okay? So there we go. So there's the solutions to your homework assignment right there. So the answer, you know why you should always be careful when standing near trees. They're a bit shady.